Earlier today, news broke that Bob Dylan has sold his entire 600-song catalog, all of the artistic output of his life up to this point, in what is believed to be a $300 million deal. Universal Music Group bought Bob Dylan's entire artistic musical life for $300 million. And I've got a real problem with this.
The price is too high? What's the problem? First of all, I'm not. I mean, I know like one or two songs of this guy, right? But like 600 songs, very impressive.
Very prolific.
What's his deal? He's 79, right? I mean, but like he's almost going to die, right? At some point,
right?
No.
Yes, it's very good Bob Dylan you're doing, Lori.
Does he
That's what his deal was. That's his whole deal.
That sounds familiar, but like, why not just like give it to his kids or whatever? I don't know if he had any kids, but why the deal now?
Well, the argument for just cashing out at a very high number is that dealing with, like, trying to preserve the legacy and dealing with all of the different rights claims is a real pain in the ass, and that it's a big fucking job. And you know what's better than having a big fucking job all the time is having $300 million goddamn dollars. Even if it is a nice income stream, it's a lot easier just to have $300 million.
Right. And I was not aware of this, but apparently, you know, to the extent that there's any concern that his music would be used for lowbrow, you know, consumerism, right? Apparently, he's already done this before, right? He's in the 90s.
Yes, many times. I've, in fact, blogged about Bob Dylan music and Bob Dylan himself being in a fucking Cadillac Super Bowl commercial a few years ago.
Was he against that, like in the 60s?
Well,
and
no,
70s?
but like the whole ethos, it would appear to be against that.
Right.
He's always obviously made his money. And there's nothing wrong with a person making their money.
There was one statement from Universal, the ones who bought it. They insist that they would use Dylan's work tastefully, which is to say that they're not.
Right, which is to say that it will be on a Burger King ad, and the king himself will be like holding the signs and strumming the guitar in Bob Dylan fashion by the end of the fucking month.
So what is your problem with, it wasn't the dollar amount, right? What was the issue you're having?
So there are any number of ways that this makes me sad. Bob Dylan comes out of the folk singer tradition, right? Which is, you have your bards through the years, and that it's people write songs, but also they don't really own the songs. And songs are something that cultures pass down from generation to generation. It's how we have always told our stories. Before we could write things down, just simply talking it wasn't ever really good enough, because it's hard to remember a story when it's being talked to you. And it's way easier when you put some music and melody to it. And so when Bob Dylan came up, and as recently as the most recent album that he just sold to Universal Music Group was an album full of covers, right? So this isn't like, it's not like all 600 of these songs are Bob Dylan originals, to the extent that you can even have originals of folk music that has been passed on for generation to generation for thousands of years.
Wait, so are you saying that in some ways, some of these songs are not his to sell because these are passed down? Like, it's violating the spirit.
I'm saying that, right, spiritually, philosophically,
right, yeah.
There's a little bit of a weird thing going on there, where he comes out of a tradition that it's weird that you can then like copyright and say that for the next 120 years, and arguably in perpetuity, no one is ever going to be able to own this in a way that I do.
Right.
And that's sort of a bummer. It's an important thing that artistic works that have mattered to the culture at large get to be reimagined. So in 2021, The Great Gatsby will fall into the public domain. And then the year after that, Hemingway's Sun Also Rises falls into the public domain. Like, there's a bunch of really interesting things. And then as it goes further and further out, a lot of the iconic characters, pop cultural characters, Snow White, Batman, Superman, they will start to fall into the public domain. And there's really interesting art that can come out of that happening.
I thought you would take a different approach. I mean, what you're saying makes sense. I think you would have a lot of people who would support that, right? I mean, I don't see what the argument would be against it, because if you think about it, the patent protections at the top were there to promote and protect the expression of these artists, right? So it's kind of being protecting them.
Right. And so 70 or 100 years later, who are we still protecting?
Right. So the argument for extending it on the other end can't be for money purposes, right? And if there's an argument to be made that this is somehow going to promote artistic expression, I mean, that'd be a tough argument to make, but it would have to be along those lines. It can't just be, I'm making a lot of money and my grandkids.
No, it's
like
a very rigid,
continue.
like authoritarian and almost fascistic way of continuing to produce culture, which is that it can only be done from on high, because the only people who own these things, as evidenced by Universal Music Group going in and buying up the entirety of Bob Dylan's musical output, is this faceless fucking corporation that is going to decide that it's okay for Taco Bell to license Like a Rolling Stone and turn it into a goddamn taco commercial, right? Like that is somehow preserving the brand in a meaningful way. No, it's just a money-making operation. And that then it gets back into like why I'm just sad about it, because obviously there are these big piles of law and giant faceless corporations with all of the power here that are going to do what they're going to do. And that's just living in the real world. But it's not like Bob Dylan had no other goddamn options here. Right? So this was a person with all of the cards. He's already handsomely wealthy. Like he's generationally wealthy as it is. So he could have done literally anything. He didn't have to do the thing where he sells to the giant faceless corporation for a big payday and gives up permanent control of his library. I just think that there are just obviously better ways to deal with this. And I like to think that a person who was able to do the sort of output that Bob Dylan was able to do, who has that, obviously cares about his work and his art, might have chosen a different path than just selling to the giant faceless mega corporation. And yeah, if it was, I like to think that if it was me, and I don't know, so fine, write it off, that I would have said, there's a 10-year time limit on this stuff. And after I'm gone, as a person who only had any success in this world, because I come out of a folk music tradition, I'm just going to give my music back to the world. I didn't really, I mean, I earned it in a way, but in an important way, I'm an inheritor of all of this.
Right. And also you have been rewarded handsomely. It's not like you were
and I want to pass this
years.
back along.
Right. Yeah, that would be one approach. Like I said, don't rule out my degenerate gambler thing, or he's doing some sort of insider scheme where he knows down the road they're gonna make changes to patent law. So like this is a terrible deal for Universal. So it's cashing out now, and in 10 years.
But that's the other thing, is that's why it's going to be so hard to fix, is because the more deals like this that there are, and there will be, then all of this will just be grandfathered in. There was some
you have
something that I was reading said that this is a growth industry, that there are what amount to venture capital firms going out and raising giant sums of money and gobbling up all of these artists' works in these sorts of licensing deals.
Are these opportunities for making money like from streaming? Like is the music industry like healthy? Like are we?
Well, no, that's the thing. It's not healthy for artists, but it's extremely healthy for these gigantic corporations, right?
So it's like a college football model, or
it is precisely like the college football model. Yeah, arguably, it's also precisely like the franchise model of selling restaurants, where you pay the peons who actually do all of the work minimum wage at the same time that the people at head office are making giant sums of money. And it's just disappointing that Bob Dylan, who has all of the power and all of the cards, would do something that only perpetuates the problem, rather than taking a different approach. And yeah, I don't begrudge him trying to make as much money as he can, but at the same time, he could have continued to license his work to goddamn Cadillac and whoever the hell else for as long as he lived, and then said enough. But it's it's never enough.
That is one thing that's telling, because no one who's very rich ever just says fuck it, except maybe I don't know. I'm sure there's some, but it's an insatiable appetite. More. I want more money.